Thank you for using Tax 990 as an authorized e-file provider to assist you in filing your 990 series forms. Today we're going to talk about how to complete the balance sheet using the interview-based filing format on the 990 series form. When you're using the interview-based filing format and you get to the balance sheet, which is the net asset and balance sheet, you're going to start by adding your assets. You can input your values for beginning of year and end of year in the necessary categories, and your total assets will calculate at the bottom of the form. So we've entered our cash assets for beginning and end of year, and as I said, at the bottom of the form, that will calculate. Once you've entered your assets, you'll move on to entering your liabilities, and that's the same process with adding your beginning of year and end of year liabilities in the necessary categories, and it'll calculate at the bottom for total liabilities. From here, you'll choose whether your organization follows or does not follow the SFAS 177. You have to make one of those choices in order to proceed, and then you would enter the information on the appropriate categories that generate. The information you input here is either going to be your assets if you don't have liabilities. If you do have liabilities entered, then you'll input the difference between your assets and your liabilities. So since we have liabilities entered, we're going to enter the difference between our asset and liability values for both beginning and end of year. As I mentioned, if we did not have liabilities reported, we would only enter our total asset value for beginning and end of year in this section. We're going to go ahead and enter the difference between our assets and liabilities. And this is going to generate our balance sheet for us. Now, if you recall, we did this in sections. This is going to be an overview of the entire balance sheet instead of just the sections. So we entered our assets beginning and end of year, and it calculated total assets. We entered our liabilities beginning end of year, and it entered our total liabilities. And then we entered the difference between our assets and our liabilities, and it generated that information appropriately, which is going to give us our total liabilities and net assets for fund balances on this line here. As I mentioned, if you do not have liabilities, you would enter this number and this number down here in your net assets and fund balance section. From there, we're going to move on to the net assets beginning of year. So you'll enter the same information that you entered on the difference between your net asset and fund balances. If you didn't have liabilities, you would just enter your net assets in that beginning of year section. So if we did not have these liabilities here, we would enter this value in the beginning of year net assets section. This is going to be our reconciliation of net assets. And as you can see here, this end of year portion is revenue less expenses plus net assets fund balances is going to give us our total end of year net asset and fund balance. This number must match this number, and this number must match this number. If they do not match, you can go back and edit the necessary sections by clicking these buttons here. If you have any questions on your balance sheet, please contact our support team via email, phone, or chat. We are happy to help, but please keep in mind we cannot provide direct tax advice or direction on how to specifically report your organization's financial information or what categories your finances fall into. But we are happy to help explain the errors if something's not balancing correctly and provide navigation on where to fix those errors.